Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of This Week in the Metaverse. My name is Graham. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Site Network, and this is our This Week in the Metaverse podcast. Last week, we had a podcast around the concept of what cryptocurrency has come from. Why does it exist? Why is it here? Obviously, today I'm going to have some difficulty speaking because I've already lost my trail there. So apologies for that. So yes, last time we were talking about why cryptocurrency exists and where it came from. And if you do want to watch the previous episode again, you can scan the QR code here and we can talk a little bit more about the episode there. So just as a very quick recap of the previous episode, we talked about the gold standard and how typical currencies like the pound, like the euro, like the dollar, were all on the gold standard. The gold standard ended. There's a lot in between that you can see if you skip on and look at the previous episode, but what we end up with is the financial crisis in 2008. And at the same time, there is a white paper about creating an electronic form of money called Bitcoin. And so that fills in the beginning and the end. But if you want to look at the middle, then scan the QR code and go and view it. Also, do remember to like and subscribe. That's how YouTube finds us with its algorithm. And also, don't forget to go to our Telegram channel because that is where you can find out about our existing and exciting IDO for our coin expedition. But before we get into talking more about cryptocurrencies, we have to talk a little bit about how cryptocurrencies are made. Because each cryptocurrency that exists is both one, not the same, and two, could be an entirely different concept in terms of what it's trying to achieve. So, in order to give you an example of a smart contract, I did what anyone would do when they're trying to save some time. And I got ChatGPT to help me make one. But I'm going to talk through what I asked ChatGPT to do, because ultimately that will help when we look at the smart contract to see if we can actually see the things that we asked for. So in this example, we are creating a smart contract for a Polygon coin. The coin is called FlixShare. We're just saying that we're creating a coin to decentralize the ownership of photography for models. So it's FlixShare. FlixShare is going to have 18 decimals, more on what 18 decimals are when we look at the smart contract. The maximum supply is going to be 450 million. Remember how we talked about in the last episode that one of the reasons that Bitcoin has a set maximum supply is to create value, because if you can't create any more Bitcoin in the future and Bitcoin is popular, then Bitcoin will retain its value. But in this example, we also say the maximum supply is 450 million, but you're allowed inflation of 5% a year. So what this means is that each year the coin exists, you are allowed to inject 5% more coins into the economy of that coin. And that sounds a lot like the kind of money pumping that you see with the dollar or the pound, with the Fed or the Bank of England. But because the smart contract is coded, if we want 5% inflation, we just ask the smart contract to give us 5% inflation, and we've got it. Not like what you see with the Fed and the Bank of England, where they aim for 2% inflation but actually get 6%. One of the great things about a code is as long as you code it correctly and you code it to do what you want it to do, it will do it. And in this example, we also have a burn feature. And a burn feature is the exact opposite of the idea of inflation. So you can remove coins from circulation. And the advantage to that is just like in the example where some dollars were taken out of circulation by the Fed not so long ago, it has a deflationary effect, or it should, because there is less money available in circulation. Now, the point of this is to point out some examples of what you can do with a smart contract. It's not to suggest that if a coin really had inflation, it would also have a burning feature. The point is that you can, and that means that if you're thinking from the example of Bitcoin, that every coin has a maximum supply and that's the end of the story, there is no such thing as inflation in crypto. There is no such thing as deflation in crypto. Then that depends on the smart contract, because you can bring these things in. And there's another concept here that I asked for called auto staking. The way to think of staking is like a savings account at a bank, where you might put your money in for a set number of days, like 30, 60, or 90 days, and you get paid an interest rate for that money. Well, auto staking is the same kind of idea. So we have here that it should have auto staking that rewards the holder 12.5% a year of the value of total number of coins held. So what that means is if you keep your coins inside this crypto platform, this bank, then this coin, or in this case with auto staking, that you simply hold the coin for a year, you will be given 12.5%. So the smart contract will say, if you've got 1,000,000 FlickShare coins, in 1 year, we're going to pay you 125,000 or 12.5% because you held it the whole time. And what this allows you to do, either through a platform where this is set up and constructed, or through your smart contract, is basically to buy some loyalty. The longer you stay with us, the more coins you'll get. And as long as people believe in your project, they'll want to have more coins. So it's quite a nice little opportunity. And this is what the smart contract looks like. Now, this particular smart contract, first of all, it's in a programming language called Solidity, and you can look up on Google what Solidity is, and you can get ready-made smart contracts that are available for you to just copy and paste and edit. But also in this case, you'll start to see that inside the programming construct of this program called FlickShare, some of these things that we talked about in the ChatGPT request, like the maximum supply, like the inflation rate, like the auto staking, and like the basis points, are already inside the contract. And the other thing I talked about in the contract excerpt and the request was decimals. So if you have 18 decimals, what it means is that instead of one FlickShare coin being the lowest possible number of coins you can hold up to 18 decimals after a decimal point. So it means in Bitcoin's case, you don't need to buy one Bitcoin, which is currently around $70,000. You could buy 0.001 Bitcoin, or a tenth of 1% of a Bitcoin. And as long as you are able to find a way to exchange to make that trade, the coin will actually let you do it because it has that many decimals. So the decimals are quite useful in order to make the coin more adaptable. And it's not just simply a case of whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm not going to bore you with any more detail about the smart contract, but the point is a crypto coin must have a smart contract. And what is defined in the smart contract is what you get as a user at the other end. And one of the important things to consider when creating a smart contract for a cryptocurrency, and I've kind of hinted at this already, is the idea of an economy. So if you think about the budget that was just had in the UK, and the Chancellor had to take the amount of money that's available, so that's the amount of crypto that's available to our coin, our supply, and she had to split it according to all of the needs of the country. So there was some for transport, and there was some for education, and there was some for the economy, and there was some for other areas of life in the UK. But also, she sets out the costs, which is the taxes. So I guess one equivalent of that in a smart contract would be to say that for every transaction that is made with this coin, 0.1% of the value is transferred to the contract holder. So if you had a cryptocurrency that did that, it would mean that every time you made a transaction, like let's say 10 Flick share in this example, 0.01% of the value of 10 would be sent back to the treasury of the cryptocurrency. So this idea of deciding what you need to spend money on, and also if you need to charge for your service, which is a bit like a tax in its own way, is a lot like what a country has to do. And that shouldn't be a surprise, because the name cryptocurrency infers that the nature of it is similar, at least, to a typical currency that you will see. And so when you are creating your budget for a cryptocurrency, and this is an example from a draft of our white paper, we as cryptocurrency owners have to create our own budget. So we have to decide how we're going to allocate our coin across all the different needs of our solution. So for example, in this example here, 20% of the supply is going to be for rewards. So that means if we take 20% of 50 million, which is 100 million XPED, there is a budget of 100 million XPED to use over time to reward the people that use our platform. And those rewards will be for doing things like completing a trail or a challenge, or perhaps it could be that in partnership with an airline or another tourism business, that your loyalty program allows you to earn XPED, and that will come from our rewards. And of course, we have to balance the ability to offer rewards against the needs of developing our solution. So everybody has to be a chancellor and work out how they're going to split it. Ecosystem is a bit like our marketing budget. So 10%, which is 50 million XPED, can be spent on developing our ecosystem. And that could be in a number of ways. That could be in terms of marketing, that could be in terms of onboarding companies that want to work with us, that we need to create certain facilities or resources for. So that's where our budget is. And I could go around all of them, but you get the idea. And then you have on the right-hand side where it's so another way of looking at it is if you take the seed round, the private round, and the public sale, you get 35%. So 35% of 500 million is going to be available to the public or to private investors. So I hope that gives you an idea. And of course, it's not just in our case what it's going to be spent on, but also we have a diagram just like this that talks about for the money we raise in our IDO, which remember is coming up soon, we also have a diagram for what we're going to spend our money that we raise in the IDO on. Things like building out our platforms, for example. So just like a country, you have to have an economy that you build, your tokenomic model. And the more attractive the tokenomic model is to crypto enthusiasts, the more likely you are to sell it. And it's a balance, just like it is in the real world. So, as you can imagine, with lots of different types of smart contract, with lots of options in a smart contract, and with everybody creating their own little budget for their own economy, there is going to be lots of different types of crypto. And certain cryptos are going to need a certain contract or a certain structure in order to A, work, and B, be attractive to investors. So now we're going to start the purpose of the video and we're going to start delving into all of them. And there are quite a few, and this might be fascinating for people who are new to the cryptocurrency world. So let's start with payment tokens. And payment tokens are designed to be effectively the original idea in that white paper that we talked about last time about Bitcoin, to be a digital form of traditional money. So Bitcoin is my example of a payment token. And the idea here is a dollar is a dollar is a dollar, a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin, and it's used for transactions. And while a lot of people may be skeptical about whether Bitcoin will actually become or already is a digital form of traditional money, you do need to consider that two countries, El Salvador and Bhutan, have made Bitcoin legal tender. That means this is money in those countries. So it's no longer theory that it's a digital form of traditional money. If you live in El Salvador, it already is your money alongside the local currency. And keeping the trend of talking about coins that are linked to real world currencies, the next category we have is the stable coin. And there are many different types of stable coin, like USDT here, which is US Tether. And the idea is they're tethered or pegged one to a major currency. So the idea is if I have one USDT, in theory, I have the equivalent value of $1. I say in theory because some stable coins are more backed by the dollars than others. So there are coins which try to have $1 in their accounts for every US dollar coin that they make available. There are others where that is less equitable, but nonetheless, the value of that coin is pegged to the dollar. And Tether is probably one of the most common stable coins that are used. Next, we come on to utility tokens. And in this case, the utility token we're going to talk about is Expedition. Our coin, XPED, is a utility token. A utility token's job is to create an economy for a platform, a product, or a service. So if you imagine we're building a network of Metaverse tourism gateways that are virtual gateways to the destination, that have events that promote that tourism destination, and the token can reward you when you are in the resort or when you're having a holiday. The utility for XPED is based around the use case in tourism. So, what kind of uses can you get? So, this page comes out of one of the drafts of our white paper. And if you want to get a copy of our white paper, it will soon be available on our website. But also, you'll be able to get a copy from our Telegram, which is another reason to scan this QR code and use it. So here are some examples of when XPED would be used. So if you were purchasing something inside our virtual tourism destinations, you'd probably be using XPED. If you were paying for tickets to events like the Edinburgh Fringe Festival or Day of the Dead celebrations in Mexico, you would be paying with XPED. If you completed a challenge, a trail, or an experience in the real world resort or destination, that would be rewarded in part by XPED. We also talked about, could we have some XPED to support tourism hardship and talent? So this is a pool that we can offer to local tourism businesses and local tourism talent in the destinations that we serve to support those that need it, whether that be through scholarships or that be through supporting good causes within the tourism industry. We have that as a use of XPED. And I won't go through all of them because this isn't directly a sales pitch for XPED. But the point is that in our case, any of our platforms or any of the partners that integrate with us and any of their destinations or our destinations in real life all have a use case for XPED. So if somebody is valuing or trying to value whether XPED is worth having as a crypto token, you have to weigh up what destinations we have already, what destinations we're looking at, what our chances are of achieving enough of a network effect to make your XPED valuable. And if you're interested in how we're getting on in creating that network effect, please join the Telegram channel, scan the QR code, and join our Telegram to find out more. The next type of cryptocurrency is the security token. And the security token represents ownership of an asset. And this is similar to owning stocks and shares inside a fund in the stock market. So in the market, you can buy something called an ETF. And inside the ETF are lots of different shares of different companies. The idea of it is instead of trying to pick one winning company, you can buy a share of hundreds or possibly even thousands of companies inside the ETF. And this example is exactly the same. Astro, which stands for astronaut, is a finance institution that has created an opportunity in which you buy the Astro token, you are buying into shares of the different cryptocurrency tokens that they purchase for the group. So it's a bit like having a professional financial advisor help you pick the best cryptocurrencies. And like anything that has human nature attached to it, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. But in this case, Astro pays a dividend every single quarter where there is a profit, and your share of the dividend is equivalent to the number of Astro tokens that you hold. Some tokens in this category offer a revenue share instead. So if the asset that you are backing is able to generate its own revenue, then you might get a profit share or revenue share rather than a dividend. But go and check out Astronaut Capital and see what they're about, and it will give you a good idea of what security tokens are about. And just a little disclaimer, I do not hold Astronaut, and also I am not sponsored by Astronaut. It is simply an example. If you go to their website, I believe it's astronaut.capital, then you will be able to discover more about security tokens. The next type of token is a governance token. And the idea of a governance token is that your project can be governed by the people that use it. And in my article on LinkedIn, which I know some of you who will be watching have read and some of you will not, again, scan the QR code to read the article. I created a coin for the airline KLM. I was rethinking how KLM could use blockchain technology alongside AR and VR to change their loyalty program. And in that article, I created a hypothetical coin called KLM Blue. And in that article, I talked about how holders of KLM Blue would be able to vote on certain aspects of the running of KLM. So, for example, they would, in my article, I said one thing they might be able to do is vote in terms of their interest in new destinations that KLM are bringing out. So, the way it would work is KLM's governance platform would put out a resolution. And in this case, the resolution might be that do you support in principle for business travel the destination of Dundee in Scotland for KLM Airlines? I've deliberately picked one I know they won't fly to so that this can't be seen as promotion or anything or anything of that kind. So what would happen is that resolution would be created and a referendum would be created. And those of you that live in the UK know all about referendums like the Brexit vote and the Scottish independence vote, where there is a question, people vote, and a majority decision is carried forward, either yes or no. And so this is how a governance token would work. The resolution about whether it's a change to the function of the coin or it's an opportunity to add another coin to your platform, whatever that resolution is, can be voted on. And if the referendum is governed by a smart contract, then immediately when the referendum closes, whichever option has the majority is automatically enacted. In other words, you are bound by the result of the referendum. So before we talk about the next type of cryptocurrency, because it's a good segue into some of the more, how can I say, controversial moments in the history of cryptocurrency, is before we talk about the next version of cryptocurrency, we've got to first talk about one of the biggest scams and scandals in crypto history, which is FTX. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview, thanks to this video here, of the collapse of FTX.
This is Sam Bankman-Fried. People call him SBF. He's the founder of FTX. He also controlled a crypto hedge fund called Alameda Research, but that's all gone now. He wants you to think he's this sweet guy. He even brought in a famous YouTuber who called him the most generous man in the world. Yep, that happened. Truth is, Sam Bankman-Fried is a liar and a crook. His personal crypto FTX token was basically a Ponzi scheme hidden below layers of Moonbro jargon. He even went on Bloomberg's podcast and bragged about it. Yep, that happened. He used his Ponzi token as collateral to borrow billions of real dollars that he couldn't pay back. He then used those real dollars to...
So I'm going to stop there before we watch the rest of this, because it's a really important point about this type of token, which is called the exchange token. You hear him talking about how Sam Bankman-Fried had his token. And one of the reasons that language is being used is because Sam Bankman-Fried was the sole controller. I don't remember in the court case whether his girlfriend, who happened to be the person in charge of Alameda Research, which is the other company involved in the scandal, had the keys as well. But supposedly, Sam Bankman-Fried was the only person that had the keys to the coins that were held on his platform. Now, this is where an important concept with crypto comes in, and it's an important lesson for anybody getting involved in this industry. And it's called not your keys, not your coins. If you purchase a cryptocurrency and you leave it on an exchange, like FTX, for example, you do not own the keys, which is the cryptographic private key that determines who the owner is. You can't possibly be the owner of the keys because it's being held for you in custody by Sam Bankman-Fried. Had it been the case that the coins for FTX, which was the FTT coin, were kept off of the exchange, or that FTX had a much better governance model and had other people that had access to different parts of the FTT token, so there was multiple people that could own different keys to the treasury, and let's also assume it was a legitimate enterprise and not simply taking customers' money to splurge on Alameda research, then it might have been possible at least that he couldn't have done that on his own volition with your coins because you have your coins in your wallet or your account off of the exchange. So this is really important. If you are buying a coin, let's say, for example, you're buying XPED. When you first buy it, it will be put on a platform for you to collect. And it's important that over time you withdraw those XPED into a wallet. And we also create a wallet for you, which we do not have access to the keys for you to hold temporarily in order to move it to a wallet that is privately yours. So this is really important. If you are not in control of the wallet or the account that holds the coins, they're technically not your coins. In the same way, and again, this is a little bit controversial, but in the same way that money that's in a bank, as in, like, say, Bank of America, is not technically yours either. You are, in fact, loaning that money to the bank. The bank will invest it. The bank will hopefully make money on its investments. And of course, if you come to withdraw it, the bank is obligated to give you the money. This, in theory, is how it should have worked with FTX as well, but it didn't. So let's just watch the rest of this to get an indication of what else happened in this case.
To build an empire out of dying companies like Voyager and BlockFi. This led Jim Cramer to call him the new JP Morgan. That's weird. It's not like Jim Cramer to promote a billionaire con artist. SBF sold people cryptos like Bitcoin, or so they thought. What they really bought from SBF was an IOU. But as long as everyone didn't cash in their IOU at the same time, the scheme worked. Until it didn't. This other a-hole who hates SBF came along and engineered a bank run with some passive-aggressive tweets. It worked. SBF didn't have enough money to repay everyone at once, and now his customers have lost everything. You'll be happy to know that this is exactly how every bank in the world operates. So where did all the money go? He misappropriated $4 billion trying to save his failing hedge fund. Whoops, that's a felony. He spent $21 million on Super Bowl commercials, $5 million for the big guy, $40 million in campaign donations. I wonder what he wanted in return. And everyone who's pointing at this story and saying,
"This is exactly why we need to regulate crypto."
remember that SBF stole billions. That's already a crime. And he spent a lot of it on bribing politicians. Also a crime, in order to create a crypto monopoly for himself. Government regulations don't protect the customers. They protect the crooks. That's exactly what SBF was trying to do.
And he was right. That was actually 99 seconds of FTX. And so you can see as that video goes on, some of the concepts that I'm talking about come out. And he does point to regulation there and saying, well, regulation only protects the crooks, not the customer. That's not necessarily true, in the sense that we are a regulated crypto company for our XPED IDO, and we are bound by the regulations in the European Union because that's where we're certified as a crypto company. Now, there are a ton, and those of you that are already involved in the project and have seen the time, the effort, and the paperwork this takes, there are already some pretty serious expectations on behalf of the crypto company, not just simply the whole crypto holder. So this doesn't protect us. If anything, if something goes wrong, we have to prove that we acted legitimately. I don't fully agree with that particular point, but the general point about FTX, I do agree with. It was effectively a scheme whereby he used money from his customers to do something else and didn't have the money to cover it. The quip that's in there that is fascinating is that's exactly how a bank works. And as I told you, that really is how a bank works. You are a debtor to a bank, the bank takes your money, it invests it, and hopefully it doesn't lose it all, so that when the bank collapses, you lose some of your money. It will be protected to an extent, but only to an extent. So it's food for thought that FTX main problem was it was acting like a bank, but instead of being successful, it wasn't. Something to think about. So we're just going to move on here and talk about the next form of crypto, which is a privacy token. And the idea of a privacy token, as it sounds like, is to still obscure the identity of senders and receivers. And as a result, just like I talked about that we are regulated in the European Union, there are certain laws that a privacy token like Monero would not be able to cover. In other words, there are certain parts of the world where there are regulations and they wouldn't be able to meet it because of this need to keep the transactions private. It's understandable in a way why people want to have total privacy with blockchain. And the press will argue, well, that's how terrorists and drug cartels and other criminals can use crypto if it's anonymous. But there's also the point about the way in which regulation is coming in. It makes it much easier to identify people. And arguably, if a government brings in its own coin, sometimes called a CBDC, and you may see information about a CBDC where everything is transparent isn't necessarily all good, in the sense that if you get a government like China, where you have social credit, oh, your social credit score is not high enough, you lose your access to the digital yuan. So you can understand why some people are worried that the regulation is a creep to national currencies going digital, to a scenario where social credit scores, like in China, are going to limit your options because it's digital. You can switch it on and you can switch it off. So yeah, there's a lot to think about with privacy tokens. In some ways, they could be bad. Monero, I personally don't think is. Otherwise, I wouldn't have used it as an example here. But some may be conduits for crime. But at the end of the day, personal privacy and the ability for people to use privacy for other reasons is a balance. I'm not arguing where the balance should be. I'm saying that there is a total credible argument that there should be privacy in some circumstances, but there's also a credible argument that you don't want a monetary system for criminal actors. The next type of token is an asset-backed token. An asset-backed token represents ownership or part ownership of a physical asset like real estate or gold. And my example coin here is Mantra, which is a project that I'm really enthusiastic about. And the idea of how it works is, let's imagine you're in Scotland. There is a scheme where the government will purchase 50% of a house. You will purchase the other 50%. And as a result, it costs you less to be able to get into the house and buy it. But when the house is sold, you are only making the profits of the 50% that you bought, unless you choose to buy more over time. Well, let's take that idea and imagine that the government is a real estate developer, and imagine that you, the buyer, is a crowd funded group of buyers. The way it will work is the asset will be split into hundreds or possibly even thousands of shares of that asset. So, in a real estate example, let's say you were doing this for tokenizing a hotel, the hotel's value would be calculated, and individual shares of, let's say, $1,000 would be created up to the value of the hotel. You, as the investor, would have the opportunity to buy as many $1,000 shares or $1,000 tokens of that hotel as you like. Throughout that life of that hotel, if it's leased out or it's sold or it gets revenue, in the case of, there's one example of a project that does this, that as that hotel gains revenue, there is a revenue share per share that is held by token holders. So another way of saying it is, if 50% of the hotel was tokenized, well, first of all, it would cost the hotel developer 50% less to build their hotel, because they're only having to finance 50%, the other 50% is tokenized. But let's say that that hotel makes 10 million in revenue in its first year. It may be that what happens is because 50% is tokenized, 5 million of that profit, which is half, is then distributed at a value per share to each of the token holders. So it allows you to own assets that you wouldn't be able to own unless they were tokenized. And again, going back to my KLM article, I talked about the possibility that airplane enthusiasts would be able to tokenize an airplane. So if KLM were trying to buy an Airbus A330, you work out the value of the A330 and either KLM purchase and finance part of it, or the whole plane is tokenized. People buy the individual shares. Some of them might want to buy a particular part of the airplane, so they're particularly interested in having, part of the cockpit as their tokenized share. Some might want an engine. Some might simply want to be able to buy 3 or 4 shares of an aircraft because there is no other opportunity for the average person to say they own a part of an aircraft. So asset-backed tokens are becoming a really big thing for what's called real-world assets, like hotels, like airplanes, like even possibly financing movies, where an independent movie producer needs to raise $5 million, let's say, to create the movie, but only has 1 million in funding. You tokenize the other 4 million, and as the movie hits the box office, you create a box office share for your token holders. And that would be an amazing way for people who are fascinated and are enthusiastic about a movie before the movie is released. Imagine the opportunity to be able to see that there was a movie called Star Wars coming out. Now, of course, we all know Star Wars was very successful. Of course we do. But let's imagine you're a sci-fi geek and also a crypto enthusiast, and you see this movie coming out and you think, well, it wouldn't hurt me to buy a couple of shares for $2,000 in Star Wars. Imagine then what would have happened if you'd been able to do that and Star Wars is a massive box office hit. You are getting all of this revenue share that you have, not just when the movie's in the cinema, but any money that that movie makes over the course of time is revenue for you. You can still sell your token share to other people if you want further down the line. If it turns out that you didn't like the movie or you want to move on. But it is a brilliant way for people to get access. It democratizes investments. I will probably never be able to afford a 150-foot motor yacht. It's highly unlikely, but I would love to own a share of one because it would be a cool asset to have a share of. So if there's any powerboat companies out there that are thinking tokenization might be a good idea, or airlines, or hotels, or resorts, if you want to tokenize your next attraction to help you build your roller coaster, do come and speak to us at Site Network, because that's exactly the kind of project that would be really fun to be involved in. The next type of token sometimes frustrates me, I have to say, and it's the meme coin. Meme coin started out as a joke. And in the case of Dogecoin, that joke became very popular because it was backed by Elon Musk. But actually, the coin really has no use, except it's a laugh because it's got a dog on the coin's image. And as some of these meme coins have evolved, many of them become charitable organizations. So there is a slice of revenue raised in every crypto cycle goes off to charity. But apart from that, it's really about creating a community that has fun buying and selling and sharing Dogecoin, or creating opportunities for you to earn it, or Shiba Inu, or Pepe, or Loch Ness Monster, or the Dundee Dragon, or whatever else comes out. I do think that they are a problem in some ways for the crypto industry, because as I posted again in LinkedIn, Mantra, which I talked to you about, the real world asset company, was second in trending to a meme coin. And so you've got this coin that's really trying to transform investments, that's second in trending interest to one that has no use whatsoever. I sometimes think that meme coins detract from the business of actually making crypto legitimate, but I do think that having a bit of fun with meme coins is okay as well. So yeah, I wouldn't invest in one, but having said that, Dogecoin did so well after Elon Musk that you could have made a substantial amount of money. And I would hazard a guess that there are more Dogecoin millionaires as a result of Elon Musk than there are of many other legitimate and really quite cool projects that are out there. The final type of token, before we talk about one more concept and end the video, is called wrapped tokens. And as the name suggests, the idea of this is a coin that is native to one blockchain, crosses using something called a bridge to the other blockchain. And because it's not native to that blockchain, it's given a wrapper on that blockchain so the token can be used on not just the original blockchain, but on the subsequent blockchain as well. And a bridge is just as it sounds. You'd imagine the Golden Gate Bridge. At one end, you've got San Francisco. On the other end, you've got mainland California. And let's just imagine that San Francisco had its own currency called the 49er, and California was using the dollar. The dollar wouldn't be accepted in San Francisco, so the dollar has to be wrapped as a wrapped dollar so that it acts and is accepted on the same blockchain as the 49er token. That's generally the idea of it. And the final concept before I end this video, I feel like the end has actually been better than the start. It was a little bit kind of jittery on my part because I lost my voice for a second, but I think it's got better, hopefully for you as it's gone along. Is the concept of layers. So as well as hearing about these different types of token, whether it's wrapped or utility or payment tokens, whatever it is, you'll also hear, because crypto loves jargon, layer 1 and layer 2. And I'm just going to explain, if you ever hear the concept of layers, what layers are about. And this is a very, very high level basic example of layers, just to finish off. So if you imagine that the main blockchain, like Ethereum, for example, is the highway, then that would be layer 1, because Ethereum as a token will operate on the main blockchain. But if there are chains created that use the Ethereum technology but create what's called a side chain which means that they are utilizing Ethereum's infrastructure, but their chain operates independently, a bit like an off ramp on the highway. Or another way of looking at it is layer one is like the internet, whereas layer two would be like an intranet, which is internal to the side chain that you have created. In most cases, a layer one blockchain like Ethereum will have its own native token. Any tokens built on top of Ethereum, and there are many tokens that exist that use the Ethereum infrastructure, would be considered layer two because they are not the native coin, nor do they have their own blockchain. If anything, they have a side chain, and they may not even do that. They may simply use the infrastructure that's already there. Okay, I think we've gone through a lot there, and we've talked through all of the different types of cryptocurrency. We've looked at how you create a cryptocurrency in the first place using a smart contract. We've shown that not all cryptocurrencies are the same, that what's in the smart contract is important because it defines what the currency can do. We've also talked about how a cryptocurrency needs an economy created, which is its tokenomics, and that economy needs to be known to the people that are going to use it, which is what are the different uses and areas of the coin that have to be considered, like your rewards, like your ecosystem fund, like your treasury, just like the Chancellor does in the UK. But also, you have to consider how you're going to use the funds that you raise. And that's exactly the same again as you would get in the real world. And then finally, after looking at the tokenomic models, we've gone through quite a number. So well done if you've stayed with me through the whole thing of all these different types of cryptocurrencies. So now when you see in the papers that all cryptocurrencies are worthless, you can say, well, that depends on the smart contract, that depends on its tokenomics, that depends on how useful those tokenomics are. And also, it's really important, just to end, that if it's not your keys, it's not your coins. Always make sure that you control the coins in your own custody, or you risk somebody like Sam Bankman-Fried running off to use it to invest with a partner like Alameda Research. And always remember that what Sam Bankman-Fried did is not that different to what a conventional bank does. It's just he didn't do it legitimately, and he didn't win in terms of the investments that he made. So that's where we'll leave it. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Please go to our Telegram. And next time, we will come back with the final installment on Crypto 101 and understanding cryptocurrencies, which will be focused even more on our currency and our impending IDO. And that will involve my fellow founders of XPED. And we're hoping to do an Ask Me Anything session, which will be a Q&A session with us. So anybody that is in the Telegram channel will get an opportunity to ask us any questions, and we'll openly ask them, answer them, not ask them, in the next episode. And yeah, you'll start to get a really good feel about what XPED is truly about just before we go to the token sale. And we'll talk a little bit more about the concept of white papers, because although I've mentioned it in the context of Bitcoin, I've not mentioned it in the context of crypto as a whole. But all crypto coins will have one, which is like your manifesto. It's your promises and your aims and your vision for your project. And we're going to share ours in the next episode. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.